Hi all, welcome to chapter 10 on power and influence in the workplace. This chapter is really about discussing the concepts of power and influence in the workplace. How do you become more influential in the workplace? How do you become more persuasive? Sources of power, contingency, and we'll discuss why organizational politics exist in the workplace, as well as some alternative perspectives. During the class lecture, some of the students really like hearing about how to manage your boss. So I'll also highlight a discussion during the class lecture around the concept of how to manage your boss and how do you have a better relationship with your boss and how to influence those that are in leadership positions in the organization as well during the class lecture. So this is going to be a relatively short video because it's just on chapter 10. And one of the first concepts I really want to talk about is that in McShane, we talk a lot about the theory around power models, where two employees interacting with each other and one has power over the other, but there's always this countervailing power that another person has on that person that's applying the power as well. So I think it's really important to understand the influence that we have as managers on our boss's behavior as well with that countervailing power. In the class lecture, we'll get into conversations about the types of power, so make sure to read through that summary of legitimate, reward, coercive, expert, and referent power, the five strong power bases. And referent is really just another word for charm. In organizational behavior, we love to create new terms for and make it more confusing. In the class lecture, we'll also talk about contingencies of power, substitutability, centrality, discretion, and visibility. So make sure you look at those four theories on contingencies of power during the class lecture as well. And also the concepts of types of persuasion and organizational behavior. And persuasion can include things such as silent authority, assertiveness, controlling information, coalition formation, upward appeal, persuasion, impression management, and exchange. I think as you read through this chapter on chapter 10 on power and influence, it'll make a lot of sense to you that for some younger students, they feel like, well, I don't have a lot of power and influence because I'm so young. But in reality, there's lots of methods of persuasion and contingencies of power and substitutions that we can use to apply power to influence our more senior managers in organizations. And for us senior managers, I think there's also something that we can also learn in this class lecture is really how important it is to apply different multiple power bases to influence people as well. There's not just one tool. What is really interesting in the psychology of organizational behavior is how interesting the studies show that many of us as managers, as leaders, we all tend to rely on one style of power to influence our employees. We start to develop a tool, one wrench that tends to fix everything, and we rely on that one wrench to fix everything in the workplace. The reality is that that doesn't do everything. And the important thing that I think is important for us to understand as students in this class lecture on chapter 10 on power is how important it is to practice multiple techniques so that you can apply different types of power and persuasion according to what you need with the current situation. And we'll talk during the class lecture around how to adapt your style so that you can build up your toolkit so you can use the multiple tools that are available to you to influence and manage organizational power within the workplace and become more influential in the companies that you work in. We'll talk about some books in this lecture about, I think the one that I like to bring today is the book called Captivology by Ben Parr. It was written in 2004. Ben talks a lot about how to influence people in the workplace and how to influence others. And he talks about some good techniques, which we'll debrief in class, about repeating messaging. The more times you say it, the more it becomes true. Creating message. So like when you're writing a message and delivering it to the organization, making sure that you find multiple ways and multiple channels to deliver that, right? Repetition, familiarity, salience, and credibility. And then also reducing the cognitive load on people when you're trying to communicate and influence with power. And Captivology with Ben Parr is a really fascinating book in terms of the psychology around influence and being more powerful in the organization. And two other books that we'll talk about during the class lecture is Linchpin by Seth Godin written in 2010, and there's only one page on that whole book that I would actually use, so don't buy the book, but I'll give you the one piece of paper that's really interesting from that book around how employees need charm, perseverance, and talent to be influential in the workplace. And Seth does a good job of articulating how important it is to have these three qualities, and we'll see if we can evaluate your own personal power style and whether you have these three qualities in the workplace or not. And then Buy-In by John Kotter. You know, I love John Kotter's work. He can be a bit of a scientist, so that YouTube video, I apologize. He comes off as really dry and boring, but I hope you find that helpful. He talks about different forms of resistance when it talks about trying to be influential in organizations and how to deal with that resistance as well. So this is a short video. I hope you liked it for chapter 10. Make sure you go through the course lecture on the Prezi slides, and then we'll debrief in more detail on how to build your power and influence within the organizations that you operate in. So can't wait to see you soon in class. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.